All right. All right, guys. Welcome to episode 5. I think this is now. We've got Alice with us today. I'm really excited about this one, and thank you for coming.
I'm excited too.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me and my kid upstairs as
That's
well.
okay. I'm sure she's having fun up there. So obviously with most of these, I like to start way back at the beginning. So let's chat about your childhood and what it was like, where you grew up.
Okay, so interesting story actually. So I'm an identical twin, and my parents they were kind of like Australian woodstockers. So I'm talking surfing, centre part, long straight hair. Dad had the goatee. They were living in a teepee up on the Clarence River, so Northern Rivers region of northern New South Wales.
Yeah, right.
When Mum got pregnant with us, and Dad had actually dropped out of a law degree in Melbourne Uni. Because this was during the 70s when it was, I don't know if you ever remember the first Underbelly series.
I do, yeah.
But this was when like the corruption within the police force was at its echelon during that
So
era.
that's what he would have been going into essentially?
So he was doing training as a part of his uni placement was as a clerk of courts at the Melbourne Magistrates Court. And my dad is a super black and white, right or wrong type of person. If the speed limit's 60, he goes 59. Like he didn't raise a daughter like that, but thank goodness. So he was watching this corruption just unfold in front of him in the law system, and he was there to please his parents, basically, to fit into this box of what you should do.
As most people
doctor,
do.
lawyer,
Yep.
accountant, etc. So he dropped out and became a garbo, and then him and my mum built this teepee from scratch and moved up to northern New South Wales. And Mum got pregnant with twins, and my grandma said, you can't raise twins in a teepee, basically. And so they moved back to Victoria and started renting a little farmhouse there. And I think it was probably the start of dismantling of what was their sole kind of purpose. Like Dad joined the the SEC at the time. My mum ended up having an affair when I was about 2.5, 3, and my parents ended up divorcing when I was 3. So at the time, it's interesting the way that, like, there was a lot of other things that happened in my childhood from a trauma perspective, but what plays out to young kids is that when somebody leaves the home, whether it's a decision that's made between both parties or not, there's a cellular abandonment within children that they don't tend to realise.
Of course, yeah.
So for me, my mum slipped into severe alcoholism and drug addiction, and there was a lot of abuse between her and her partner in the house, both physical and emotional, that my sister and I witnessed, and some of it was pretty heavy. And so that went on from about 3 years old to about 10 or 11 years old. And so Mum checked out and Dad moved out. And so the way that plays out is that you feel abandoned by both parents. So Mum's not there on a mental plane and Dad's not there on a physical plane.
Yeah.
So even though intellectually my sister and I were like, well, my dad's my hero because he saved us from Mum, and we would call him every time Mum was not able to look after us. And he was always there to the 3-year-old whose father left the home, even though he didn't want to. That comes through as abandonment. And then in my early teenage years, so I started drinking when I was 14. Mum had been in and out of rehab by that point, and she was sober. But as soon as I started drinking, it was like the worst, felt like the only thing to do. It was also the worst thing that I've ever done probably in my life. So I don't think there's been a time... There's probably been a handful of times in my entire life where I've drunk and not gotten drunk, where I've had a glass of wine.
There's no in-between sort of thing.
Not really. And that's not just alcohol. Like that could be exercise. That could be, I saw an incredible thing last night about children of trauma. They will fall into drugs, booze, eating disorders, taking it out through sex and through achieving or trying to get external validation.
Yeah,
and then one of them was excessive cleaning, and I sent a message to my therapist and I'm like, why the fuck is excessive cleaning the only one that I didn't do?
Out of all these ones I could have gotten,
for sure, right. So drinking was like the worst thing, and also from a genetic perspective, it had been through my mum's side of the family. So my uncles, my auntie, her dad, my mum, that was just very successful alcoholics all the way through my family. And when I say successful, I mean like they were all raging drunks. So
yeah, it was like a culture that was built. It was like a tradition essentially, right?
And very secret.
Yeah, okay.
My sister and I did a really, really good job of hiding it from the school.
Yeah.
We were teachers' pets and we were straight A students, and school became a refuge and books became a refuge. And so we covered it up really well until Mum kind of started showing up for school events and things like that. So first it was secret, and then it was humiliating. And so there's just so many kind of roller coasters of trauma that come through that as well. But then, you know, that can all be put aside by the fact that then I took myself on a roller coaster very similar to that. So, you know, every single time drinking to blackout from 14 years old, everything that goes along with that, you know, seeking external validation from boys and from, you know, I used to shoplift and, you know, it's looking back at it, there's so many instances where I could say that I'm lucky to actually be sitting in front of you right now. I still have, like, there's, you know, a time where I sat on a drunken high, I think, and I sat on a ledge of a skyscraper building in Melbourne, like balcony. Like I have times, or ride my motorbike. I got my motorbike license at 17 and 9 months old, and I used to ride it around Phillip Island with my friends on the back when I was drunk. And I think back to those times, and yeah, it's really lucky that I'm here.
Yeah.
And then I lived with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame during those teenage years, but still somehow managed to keep grades going well. And that was that whole, like, please like me,
The external
see me,
stuff.
please like me, please see me, please validate me from another probably adult perspective. Like if a teacher says that I'm doing really well, then I'm validated by an adult and a power figure seeing something in me. And I got into uni and started studying secondary teaching and health sciences, and then dropped out because I spent every weekend at Revolver. I don't know if it's a Melbourne institution. Anyone from Melbourne will understand.
Is it still around now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like a $50 entry to get in these days.
Yeah, right.
It's got a famous set of stairs that you walk up where they let you in or they don't let you in. And we would go from, you know, Friday night and sometimes leave Sunday mornings, or we used to set our alarms for 6 a.m. and get up for a DJ called Boogs. So there was Boogs and Spacey Space. And so we used to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning and go in for their set and start the day to party there.
Yeah, right.
So I dropped out of the first uni degree then, and then gave it a couple of years and went back to study nutrition, food and health sciences at Vic Uni, and did a really similar thing. So I was really attempting to like tick the boxes of what I thought I should do, and just racked with guilt and shame from basically tapping out and checking out and partying as much as I could. Yeah. So I had a really good bunch of friends around me, which I think is really like there's so many things I look back on and I think was something
like watching
helping.
over. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge believer in angels or anything like that. And I'm definitely more a believer in the power of your own choices. But God, there's years that I can look back on and wonder how it happened. Yeah.
Are you still friends with a lot of those friends that you had back then?
Yeah. So I grew up on Phillip Island, and a lot of them are still living on Phillip Island. And I would still classify them as friends. I think as we get older, I've had 2 kids now, and most of them have had kids as well. There's you kind of fall back a bit. It's like when we used to live on opposite sides of the city, it'd be, do you want to catch up this day? No, I'm busy. Do you want to catch up this day? No, I'm busy. And we are different in many ways now. So, you know, I have put the booze and the drugs aside, and I focus on things very differently now. And when we catch up, it's wonderful and beautiful, but then it reaches a certain time of the day or the night where it's no longer my jam. And moving away from that FOMO, you know, I've recognized, and I have to remind myself, the things I have a fear that I'm missing out on aren't actually the things that I enjoy doing anymore, or they disconnect me from myself. But I've never had a group of people that I look to and think that was a really bad decision to have them as friends. They're all still amazing people. I've definitely had boyfriends like that. There's definitely been people in my life like that. But so I stopped drinking. I've had my first child when I was 27, Holly.
And you finished your course before all that? Like that was all done?
No, so I didn't end up finishing the second degree.
Okay.
So I ended up working, I started in recruitment. So I was working in sales recruitment, and then got recruited by a company I was working for called Concur. So I somehow had this really incredible ability of just working into the next level of business. Like I was a sales rep actually for a sportswear called Spy Optic, which do snow goggles and motocross goggles and sunglasses and things like that. And that was like kind of like a dream job for a while. And then from there went into recruitment and then got recruited by this software as a service company based out of Silicon Valley. And it was awesome. So there was a lot of overseas travel, and I met some of my favorite men managers that I've ever had in my life. I tend to be very well... I think I get a lot more inspiration and mentorship off really strong masculine figures, and maybe that's got, my therapist would have a ball with that, I'm sure, but met like two guys, Marty and Murray, who were probably the strongest leaders I've ever had in business. And from that point onwards, I was headhunted to go work at LinkedIn when we came to Australia, so the corporate side of LinkedIn. So another software as a service company, as a sales manager here. So I was still drinking way too much at this time. So I worked out that, I was putting on my stilettos every morning. I was putting on a suit every morning. I was 25 years old with a $150,000 salary, and I traveled to San Francisco and around the world, and I was flying up to Sydney each week for work, and I was rocking up to work maybe 100 days a year hungover was what I probably worked out, and not good hungover. Like, I would look okay. Looking back, I thought I looked okay. If I look at photos now, my skin was sallow. I was grey and dry and flat. I look, I think, younger now than I did during those times.
Yeah.
But it was still happening, and I was like a high salesperson and topping the leaderboard, and, it just deeply ashamed and guilty and not happy and disconnected. And I was at LinkedIn in the corporate boardroom one day, sitting on my own, and there was like an ad that came up for a health coaching course. And I called them on the spot, and they were like, "We've got a payment plan for you." And I said, "No, like, I don't need to do the payment plan. I'm just going to pay you up front, and I'm going to do that." And that was a 1-year health course. And just during that time, it was not like I was learning new things. It was like I was coming home again. So
Okay.
my mum, whilst she was super disconnected and she was high or passed out, she was, if you've seen I'm Not Your Guru by Tony Robbins on Netflix.
Oh, bits and pieces.
There's this part in it where a woman stands up and she speaks about her father, who's a drug addict, and about how she was abandoned and there was abuse and things like that. And Tony basically says to her, if you're going to blame him for all of these terrible things that you feel like he's done to you and terrible ways he's shown up in your life, you also have to blame him for your resilience and your ability to walk through fire and come out the other side, and your capability, like all of these things. And I mean, that was only recently, if I think about it, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But that really, really impacted me.
That resonated big time.
So hard.
Yeah.
So hard, because I think even though, I used to use my hero's journey a bit like a victim story. Like, I was a victim and there was abuse, and, some of the stuff we saw and were a part of was just fucking horrifying. Like, I would never, ever, ever, ever wish it on another child. And also now I don't see myself as like a survivor. When you're a child, you don't have a choice, and there are horrific things that happen to children and around children every single day. But when you become an adult, you have a choice every single day to do something different with your life. And so then it becomes on you.
Yeah.
And so I don't carry the victim story anymore. I just understand that I am who I am today because of absolutely everything that's ever occurred in my life, and then the choices that I've taken to spin gold out of that, I suppose, like turn it into something completely different. So did the health... even though mum was like tapped out, she was a super mother nurturer. So she was passed out on the ground in the lounge room, but also then had this peace sign shaped veggie garden, and we were quite broke, and so she would cook everything from scratch, and it was all either food we'd grown or straight from the local market in Gippsland area, super close to super farm to table type stuff. And because we didn't want to be in the house and there was land around us, my sister and I would often just open the back door and just go adventuring. So I spent most of my early years hiding from her and her partner's behaviour, but hiding barefoot in the bush and in the garden and with the chooks and with riding bareback horses around the paddocks. And so there was that foundation, and I think foundation for kids is important as well, alongside the stuff that I used to use as a victim's story. And so when I was studying health coaching again and not clubbing every weekend, it was like pieces, like I was following crumbs again back home.
Yeah.
And everything was kind of falling in place. And so in about 2000 and 2012 or 2013, I started blogging through that health coaching course, and that was when blogging was really, really big.
Fresh, yeah.
It was huge back then.
Yep.
And, getting your email subscribers up, and that was a really big thing, more than Instagram followers at the time. I feel like we're coming a full circle back to that again now
big time. I think it's still around, hey?
Yeah, it's going to make a huge impact. And now that we've seen what's happening with social media and censorship, I think even more.
we could go on about that one for sure.
So blogging was really huge, and I started to do that, and I was really connecting, I think, with myself and then other people, and I started writing about all the stuff that I was ashamed to speak publicly about, my drinking and how that was affecting me, and my shame around that. And I feel like maybe we've cliched these two words together, but that Me Too scenario of women reading that, and men as well. I was working in a corporate office with 26 young men who were also like this boys club type of boiler room scenario, and I had 2 or 3 men who were also going through similar things, and who would come to me and thank me for sharing what I was sharing, because in a boys environment, like if you're not drinking too much and if you're not snorting cocaine on the weekends with your big salary, then like something's wrong with you,
exactly.
Right? And so that was like almost like a permission thing for them to see someone else talking about it openly.
That's cool.
So I've had a lot of experience, I think, in talking about things that may make other people feel uncomfortable, which is why perhaps it comes across now that it's super easy for me, and it is, because I've been through the bell curve of that right back in the beginning. But so started launching health coaching courses through that blog at the same time. And they did really well. So during my second maternity leave, I was sober, and my manager at LinkedIn was like, we want you to come back, and we've got this new job for you, and you can do 4 days a week. And he was an awesome manager, and I really wanted to work with him. And I remember sitting there having that meeting with him and just thinking, I've just made X amount of money from launching this course, self-taught myself how to build websites, and like everything I learned from scratch, working until 1 a.m. in the morning and learning to code, like this stuff that I wouldn't even be able to do now. I've forgotten how to do it.
Everything's pretty automated now. Like you've got websites or everything, you'll just type something in, it'll do it for you, spew it out.
Yeah. And then at the time, like I was just so invested in it. And I remember feeling this incredible empowerment of I can say no to a 6-figure plus salary. Like I can say no to everything I was told was what I should strive for. $150,000 a year salary, engaged. I didn't say goodbye to the husband. Yet. No. But I was saying goodbye to all of the things that people were kind of striving for. Like I was working in stilettos and suits on the top floor of the IBM building, and traveling around the world and getting paid lots of money for it. And I basically sat there and said, I've just launched this course and it's going really well, and this feels great for me, and I feel like I'm coming home to what I'm supposed to be teaching about. And you know what? Helping people become healthier feels a lot better for my soul than selling software to HR managers does, basically. Yep. Go figure. And I basically walked out of the corporate world, and it was the most tiniest little meeting, most impactful meeting probably I've ever had in my life, because for the first time I was really sovereign about this choice that I'd made. And from that moment onwards, regardless of what has shown up in my life, I know that I can create in an instant something that gives me abundance in health and wealth and spirituality and creativity and all sorts of things. And then I went back and studied nutritional medicine at the Australian Institute of Applied Science, and then I completed it. So it was my third shot.
But now you're doing it a second time when you've now found your purpose, your passion. Yeah. So it would have felt 10 times easier doing it, because you knew exactly what was going to become of it at the end of it, right? It's all going to work in with what you're trying to do now.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I am unable to practice as a registered nutritionist. That's a choice as well. And the reason being is that I work with a referral marketing company, a multi-level marketing company. Yep. And the irony of that is I work and share a product that's really helpful from a health perspective, but I'm not able to be registered with the CMA and make a commission off a product that's based in the multi-level marketing space, which is essential oils basically. Yep. But I can be registered with the CMA, and I can share the brands that I would, like an Eagle or a Bioceuticals or a Metagetics or other supplements that I do recommend to people all the time anyway.
Yep.
And I can make a kickback off that. So unfortunately, it's not about health, it's about politics, which is what it is mostly these days.
With most things, yeah.
And then secondarily on that, I've been incredibly vocal in the last year. I've always been vocal about health since then. So it's, it's been nearly 9 years of me being super loud about where I see whole health coming from, which is with, starts with each of us inside ourselves with a choice, basically.
Yeah.
Doesn't come externally. I've been incredibly vocal about that, more so as the conversation around health has become more and more polarising, and I would be deregistered, so I wouldn't be able to practice and speak my truth, which to me is the truth at the moment.
Yep.
And I did have a complaint that I had to, I'm not going to say argue, that I had to respond to late last year that came through the Health Ombudsman of Queensland, which was basically a complaint where they were saying we could, shut your voice down as a non-registered practitioner for sharing information that goes against the narrative of the government narrative right now.
Like their health guidelines, whatever they're trying.
So the only reason that I, in the end, didn't have to be answerable to that, and why I'm not answerable to it, and why I can keep speaking my truth / the truth incredibly loudly, and why I'll never shut up on that, is because I don't sell a health service at the moment. So if I was to invoice you for nutritional coaching, and then go on my Instagram account and say, I feel like people should investigate the directives that are happening right now, because what we're seeing is health implications that could be both short and long term and incredibly dangerous, then I could have that. I could be essentially fined or
shut down,
platformed, because of that. If I was making money through sharing the knowledge that I have through the years of study that I've done and personal experience. So it's a really crazy time for health and wellness.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So you're now at this point where, like you said, you've got this audience based around what you've gone through over the years. You've got all this knowledge. What's been the biggest part of you growing into what you are now? Like this whole daily, I love the idea and the concept of it, but it just grew from the blogs and the people getting back to you and seeing people change through your knowledge.
I believe wholeheartedly in this learn, do, teach methodology organically. So I don't get up every day and think I'm going to be a healthier person today so I can tell someone about what that feels like. I start selfishly. So for me, it's about how do I make myself feel good. So remembering that a lot of the stuff that I did experience as a child directly affected, and sometimes really negatively, my adult experiences. So I was still waking up with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame from things I'd done in my mid to late 20s, and at times in my 30s. I've had moments where, healing and sobriety, and when I say sobriety, I mean not just not taking drugs or not drinking alcohol, but sobriety from the things that you use to disconnect, which could be like shopping, porn, shoplifting, sex, drinking, drugs, exercise. I've been addicted to Bikram yoga before, like name it. I've used it to try and disconnect.
Wow,
right?
okay.
So that's not linear. You don't just go, oh, thank God I've stopped drinking, a bottle of red wine every night now, so I'm good, I'm healed. So there's also been times, even in my 30s, where when the more present you become with yourself, the more time you spend with yourself, the more you actually recognise you have things to work through.
Yeah.
And so it's like that meme that says like, oh, here's the consequences of my own actions. Like every freaking day I wake up and I have something that I want to work on. And for me, I work on me first. Health, my own personal health and well-being is my number one priority. And that's before my kids, before my husband. And a lot of people may push back on that, but I wholeheartedly believe that if I'm not showing up for myself first, then I cannot be the best person for anyone around me. And showing up for me in my health is not just fitness, it's my mental health, my emotional health and my creativity. It's like a pie, and there's pieces of it that sometimes have more bites out of it than others, but showing up for myself first in that is incredibly important. And that also involves therapy and self-reflection, and then that's not linear. And it's from those experiences then I get experiential knowledge that I can then share onwards. And for some people, they may listen to me hear a story, and I tend to try to story tell kind of unconsciously, I suppose, and some weeks I'm better at it and some weeks I'm not. But someone will connect with that, and maybe they'll message me and I'll have a conversation with them about that, maybe privately, because I'm pretty open about a lot of the things I've been through and that I do in my life. And then I share it onwards. But there's been a lot of I would say for me, I'm so bullish about moving through the muck, like absolutely bullish about it, that it means that I get to experience like super green meadows a lot more.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I've asked myself at times, is that because I've had so many instances where metaphorically I haven't died? Like when people talk about being afraid to be judged or being afraid to be themselves or being afraid to speak up or being afraid to, like it could just be sell something in a market where people are like going to say, you don't have the right to sell that. Like it could be anything, right? Yeah. But I've shown up and done the thing that people say that you can't do so many times and then not died that I look for that now. I'm let's just see how crazy shit can get. 100%. Yep. And I've never died. I've always come out stronger on the other side. Most of the time it's been really freaking successful. And so there's a muscle there that gets built throughout that's super important. And just coincidentally, the more I did that, the more abundant I became financially, the more successful I became at witnessing the actions I was doing that were going to lead to crappy consequences. My husband quit his job. He works full time on his YouTube channel now. We were able to move the family from Melbourne to the Sunshine Coast a few years ago, and we're going to sell our property down in Melbourne, but we bought a place up in Sunshine Beach just really coincidentally before it ended up being, $1 billion.
Now it's crazy, yeah.
And so every greatest success I've had in my life, which includes abundance in all areas a lot of the time, is because I've navigated through the muck and just kept going and then didn't die. And the freedom of feeling that I get on the other side of that's really
there's
awesome.
a lot to unpack there, but that's amazing because off the back of that, from what I took from that is that, and this is a personal experience thing for me, where you always talked about, although you might be feeling good, you need to make sure your cup's full before you can help anyone else, right? Because I think a lot of people go through something and then they think they've fixed it by going to see a psychologist, or they've done their meditation, they've done a few things, and they're like, oh, I'm fine now, let's just leave it for a few weeks. And then they're like, oh, fuck, I'm right back where I was. What's happening? Well, you're not staying on top of that maintenance. And I think Jordan and I talked about it, regards to a car. If you're not maintaining it and getting your tyres checked, the fuel filled up, the oil changed, all these sort of things, eventually it's breaking it down. So I love the fact that you, no matter what, you're making sure that you're looked after. Number one is looked after. Because eventually that cup's going to be empty. And then it's like, well, how do I give my kids, my friends, my family, all these beautiful things that I know of without myself being full of that? So, and to then, like you said, look for those hard times, look for the muck and die, like sort of go through that. I think a lot of people now, they've been told that it's okay not to, if there's something uncomfortable, don't go towards it.
We are so weakened by comfort in today's society.
If it gives you anxiety, don't do it.
It was so weakened by comfort. Rich Roll says...
He's awesome, hey?
Yeah, whenever you think things are going sweet, just remember your addiction's doing push-ups. And I take that not to mean, it doesn't necessarily have to mean an addiction to a drug or alcohol, but whatever you thought you'd overcome, the effects of that is doing push-ups in the background, and that's so spot on about
getting ready sort of thing.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to show up. Back. I've had moments where I would call moments of sober insanity, where I've been in a situation where an emotion is triggered. For me, it's abandonment. And it's come out of seemingly nowhere, and I've woken up in hospital because I've done something really, really stupid, like literally. And I look back and we were all like, oh, I don't know how that happened. And then I have met the most incredible therapist over the last couple of years. Her name's Patina. She's up here on the Sunshine Coast. And we can easily look back and go, did it come out of nowhere?
It was just working out in the background.
100%.
Yeah.
And there was maintenance I wasn't doing on my own emotional well-being, and everything's interconnected. But then I want to speak to that as well, because when you talk about psychologists or we speak about therapy, just because someone, and this is, I mean, we're learning this more than ever now, just because someone's been to university or been to school or they have the plaque on the wall and they tell you this is what their expertise is, that doesn't mean they're the right person for you, and it doesn't mean that they're the right person for anybody. So I was doing a lot of really, really, really dumb stuff in my late teens and early 20s, which I've said I'm lucky to have survived, and I've seen a lot of psychologists because that was the right thing to do and I had the money to pay for it. And I used to talk them into corners. Like I would manipulate them and control them. And because talking's my way is another thing that I use to
like your sales essentially
as well. Yeah. Right. So I would, and I remember having one guy in St Kilda who was so bad and he was like, I don't really think there's anything wrong with you. And this is where I was like drinking to blackout and sleeping with heaps of guys and just like, so much was not okay, and I was just manipulating the situation using the tools that I had at my disposal. And it wasn't until my late 30s that I've met the right therapists for me. And you could say that about drugs as well, pharmaceutical drugs as well. So my dad was suicidal when I was in my early 20s, and he found himself. Well, he put himself in a situation where he was in a van gassing himself, and he will say to you, he doesn't speak about it that often, but he's like, you know, it takes a really long time to gas yourself in a car. I don't know how people don't realize that, and I'm laughing about it because he's here and he's freaking legend.
He's been through it.
But he went to a doctor the next day and he got prescribed antidepressants, and they were the right ones for him.
Okay.
For him at the time. So he's drug-free at the moment and he took himself on antidepressants, which I'm not recommending anyone do themselves. But he did that and he found medication that was right for him, and it's one of the reasons that he's here with us today.
Yep.
I also know people who've had the wrong medication prescribed to them, which has caused psychotic episodes and sent them to try and attempt to take their lives.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be really conscious now more than ever of the frameworks that we've grown up in, the belief systems that we have, and the things we say are right and wrong and should and shouldn't, and the medical system and prescription-based models and therapy-based models. All of these are okay to question. You can interview your therapist and should interview your therapist, and if something doesn't feel right, then walk the fuck away as quickly as possible, because they can do more damage than what good, I suppose.
Yeah, and I love that you said that you found the right one, because that can be pretty hard to do without word of mouth. You know, obviously Google reviews can be good as well. You can read into it. But how did you find Patina, was it?
Yeah, so she had found me through Instagram.
Okay.
And then she didn't reach out and say, can I therapy you?
Yeah.
No.
I can sort your shit out.
She has a history where we have a lot of overlapping experiences, and I actually initially chose to not have her as my therapist. I would recommend her to everyone else because I was like, well, I know her personally now, so I don't think it's right for her to be my therapist. But now it got to the point where I was just seeing and hearing about the results that she was having with some of her clients, and I was like, okay, she can therapy me. She can learn about all my deep dark secrets and all my belief systems in life.
Yep.
I think there's a through line with what I'm saying, and that's that we can't know ourselves until we are willing to learn about ourselves. So you're not going to know that this therapist is right or wrong for you unless you understand a little bit more about how you're feeling about the situation, which is super hard to do when you're numb. And that numbing, you know, and this is one of the things that I teach. Like for me, my health, my message of integrative wellness and functional medicine, and when I say plant-based, I don't mean I'm a vegan. I'm the opposite. But I mean connection to earth and Mother Nature and the things that she produces. If we're not focused there first and we're focused on processed life, including processed food, processed connections, shallowness, it's impossible to know how we really feel. And so therefore it's impossible to show up for ourselves in that selfish way, in a way that best serves us and then the people around us. You could die and never know yourself, or get super close and then be like, this is so painful, and pick up a beer.
Let's get out of here. Yeah. Then that's, I think, you know, understanding that more now, I think a lot of people have to go through not a lot of people have to go through it, but I think what helped me personally, this is my personal experience, I went through a really hard year last year. Like it was one of the hardest years I've ever had because my girlfriend was locked out of the country, like we spoke about. Essentially, I was by myself. I had a roommate at the time, but we didn't really talk. We weren't close. Had a lot of good mates. I was experiencing that same thing that I had when I was 18, 19. Like we said, this little thing was doing push-ups for those 10 years.
Yeah.
And this one experience just snapped me, and I went back to that depressive state, that by myself all the time, that learning things about myself. But I learned so much about myself that I'm now in this place, which is I want to be of service to others because I don't want them to ever fucking experience what I've been through and what others have been through that I've helped in the last couple of years as well. Because I think, like you said, being by yourself is huge because you listen to those little things in your head more. You're not away from it, and you really have to go through it, through the muck. And it made me come through the other side and understand myself more, understand the people around me as well, and also understand little things like you just said with the nutrition side of things. Understanding how much this has affected this over the years without realizing. I always thought I ate pretty healthy, but I had no idea, not a clue. Now I'm studying my Cert 4 in fitness. Obviously, I want to be a personal trainer / coach, more around, like you said, the functional medicine side of it, understanding that I just want people to be happy. And I want them to have the tools, tips, and resources through this sort of stuff, talking to people and listening to people like yourself, and understand how much that food has an effect on literally everything. So we need to break that down a little bit because I think I had a look into one of your blogs where it talked about, like your sleeping, your autoimmune issues, your gut health, all this sort of thing. How is our food affecting us in that way?
How isn't it affecting us in that way is probably the better scenario. So the interconnectedness of our inner ecosystem and our external ecosystem is so inextricably everything relating to how we show up as our whole health that I feel like it's the most simple topic and also the most intricate that we could ever speak about. The people, to start off with though, the people that I feel like are the healthiest people that I know, mentally and physically, are the people who deeply understand that our external ecosystem and internal ecosystem are working in a symbiotic relationship. So when you say food and how that's connected to our health, I think of food also as, for me, salt water, for everybody, sunlight, fresh air, hydration. Like, I'm not talking about what we're chewing. It's talking about absolutely everything that we're absorbing. It's what we put on our skin.
Moisturizers, stuff like that.
Like it's
deodorant.
The environmental toxins that we have around us and what we're absorbing in that, and then how our body is working with that. Then it's our internal ecosystem. So one of the most frustrating, maddening, one of the most maddening pieces of the allopathic healthcare system is spot checking symptoms, basically. So I just want to really, I would never usually put this disclaimer here, but I will. Modern medicine is freaking awesome. Thank goodness for, I had surgery 2 months ago. If it wasn't for anesthesia, there was a complication. I had internal bleeding. I had 2 surgeries in the last couple of months. It was supposed to be 1. If it wasn't for anesthesia, if it wasn't for antibiotics after I had an infection after the second surgery, all of these things I'm absolutely blessed to have been able to get my hands on. And for people who are acutely unwell, modern medicine is a miracle. It's overused. It's used at times when it's not needed. And it's been so bastardized and removed away from the Hippocratic oath of, at first, do no harm, that we've forgotten what it exists for in the first place. So allopathic care works best when you're in an acute need, and you're going to recover best and heal best when you show up for that allopathic care in as good a foundational state as is possible for you. That can differ from person to person for a number of different reasons. But the difference between, say, me showing up for surgery versus type 2 diabetic who lives on junk food every day, who I don't know what deodorant you use. I'm like, who sprays Lynx deodorant from top to toe.
Oh God,
and,
no! Yeah.
Lives in a dark room and
no sunlight.
No sunlight, no movement. Like, I'm going to come out of the surgery in a much different state than this other person's going to come out of this surgery.
Foundation's a lot stronger.
This foundational wellness is so incredibly important. So spot checking, like for me, I talk to women and men about hormones all the time. And, if you want to give a really good example of how extremely fucked up allopathic care has gotten, excuse my language, but this just blows my freaking mind, is that every single day in Australia right now and around the Western world, we have doctors recommending that you remove an organ rather than seeking to understand how integrative wellness can support this. For instance, women having hysterectomies, having their thyroid removed, etc. Like thyroid disease is one of the most common autoimmune diseases that women have. It's also the most easily treatable, and it's the one that women are getting recommended to have parts of their body removed to spot check. So what we're doing is it's like a game of human whack-a-mole, and you'll see this within the psychological space and the psychiatric space with medication for mood, anxiety, depression. We play whack-a-mole with the symptom that comes up, and the symptom is not the problem. Like, let's say, for instance, it's a skin condition, because this is really simple. Let's say you're covered in cystic acne. Now, a lot of people, I know Jordan spoke about this in his podcast with you. I think he was prescribed Roaccutane or something like that, right? So you're prescribed a symptomatic Band-Aid. So the cystic acne is not the problem. It's a voice that the body is using. Like, the skin is the largest organ of detoxification. It's also the largest mouthpiece that we have to say that something's not right. So the cystic acne is the voice. It's like I'm screaming out for help that something's going on within my body right now that needs some really deep care and consideration.
Yep.
Here, just whack this steroid cream over the top of it and it'll be sweet, right? So the problem is not the skin, the problem is going to be the gut. There's going to be something going on within the gut and digestive system, which is so inextricably linked to our mental state and our immune system. If you have a damaged gut integrity or leaky gut, you will have an autoimmune disease of some shape or form that may never be diagnosed. And you're probably also then going to have anxiety, dark moods, it could be depression, hormone disruption, poor sleep, fatigue, lack of sex drive, you gain weight really quickly. Like, it could be a number of things. It's like a poo-poo platter of like all of these different things that can show up. And the skin's like, I'm here to tell you what's going on. And allopathic care goes, you quieten down. I'm just going to put this Band-Aid over it. Shh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, shut up.
Exactly, shut up. Fuck, it makes me so mad. And so what we do is when we put the Band-Aid over it, the body, because our bodies are so infinitely wise, they're like, okay, so they put the Band-Aid on my skin, the redness and the inflammation has gone away. By the way, all of these creams damage the microbiome of the body so badly that they cause more autoimmune condition and dysbiosis in the gut and dis-ease of the body, because it's all interconnected.
It's all absorbed, right?
It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to reduce inflammation, but it's inflaming our immune systems and other parts of the body. So the skin's like, oh, we tried there, we're not going to do that anymore. So right now I'm going to give you like severe anxiety, panic attacks and depression. So then you'll go to the psychologist or psychiatrist or the GP. You can walk into a GP now and be prescribed antidepressants in a 10-minute period with no questions asked. I had a 19-year-old girl contact me last week and say this, prescribed antidepressants within a 10-minute period, no more questions asked.
Wow.
So the skin calms down, the anxiety, the moods, the depression, medicate the skin, medicate the depression. The doctors prescribing the medication aren't talking to each other. They don't even understand what's contraindicated from a medicine perspective. Now, times that, like by the time people are 73 years old these days, I think they've got around 27 different prescriptions of medication that we have no idea about the contraindications of them and how they're interacting. And the body's in there. And so this is the thing, like the way I want to teach and inspire health and wellness is our body holds the answers to and will tell us everything we need to know if we're clear enough to listen to it. And if we're not, we're going to end up playing whack-a-mole with allopathic care and with symptomatic Band-Aids until we are so far removed from finding the root cause that it becomes almost impossible unless you decided to go cold turkey on every single medication. And in that, there's huge issues. If you go cold turkey on anti-anxiety, antidepressive or antipsychotic medication, one of the greatest side effects is suicidal ideation. So this drugged model of allopathic care and this symptomatic Band-Aid, for what can be the most simplest things. So for instance, vitamin B12, zinc deficiency, vitamin D deficiency in Australians, magnesium deficiencies, even deficiencies from vegan malnutrition, and I won't go too far into that because there's a lot of people who eat an omnivorous diet who are also really malnourished at the same time. But women presenting who felt amazing for a couple of years and who'll show up to their nutritionist appointment with severe anxiety, and then you speak and care and do the due diligence and duty of care, and you find out that they have been vegan and they're feeling great, but then they've also got extreme anxiety, and you run bloods, and which needs to be done a lot more often, and there's a severe B12 deficiency. This, anxiety being linked to a specific nutrient deficiency, the fact that we're not recognising it with this simple, easily treatable, easily supportable communication metrics within our own body within the care model is tragic, absolutely tragic. I mean, I could talk about the stories all day long that I hear. And when I talk about clarity and being able to hear our bodies, I don't eat this perfect diet all the time. And, when I say I'm clean of drugs and alcohol, like sometimes I'll go out and I might have a puff on a joint or something like that. Like I'm not this, I'm not on a pedestal. I'm not like a pariah of perfection when it comes to that. If you see me on Friday night pizza nights, we are making our homemade pizzas. I'm doing donuts and pizza every Friday night right now. So I'm like waking up with a bit of a gluten hangover every Saturday morning. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but when we have consistent choices that inflame the body, and inflammation is the root cause of all dis-ease in the body. The body's going to tell us A, and if we don't listen, we're going to find ourselves going down a route where we're just super tapped out from it. But also hearing, I'm trying to, how do I say it? Like, I don't want to tell women or men not to drink or not to eat dodgy food ever.
Enjoy these things, once in a while.
But if I was speaking to men and women, then alcohol would be the key thing that I'd say stop for 3 months, like give it a shot. And the reason that I say that is because I myself have had an experience where I stopped drinking, and never, ever, ever in my life, like I was 27 at the time, and the clarity of mind. I built my whole business. Like I built $1 million business during that time. I'm totally unemployable. I will be able to create whatever I want so that I live in financial abundance for the rest of my life now, built off sobriety. And you're not just going to hear this from me. You'll hear this from a multitude of people, that when you remove depressive drugs from your life, there is an optimized brain capacity that you have that you're not going to find anywhere else, and that what you have the opportunity of creating during that time is fucking incredible. Yeah. And the strength that you have to walk through that muck to get to those green fields is going to be exponentially greater.
That's incredible to think that if you just remove that one thing, obviously it's not going to fix everything, but the benefits you're going to get from it sounds like it's one of the best things for you. So I talk about a personal experience with that as well. I went on, I think it was about eight months I did with my best mate at the time, still good friends, but he was my coach that I worked with. So I said to him, look, I'm sick of being a bigger guy. I wasn't really too much worried about like how I looked and everything, but I was like, let's go on a bit of a journey here. So he got me counting macros, all this sort of thing. I didn't really understand like gut health at the time, but it was just about, let's get rid of this fat. I dropped 22 kilos. So I went from, I think it was about 130 kilos down to 107 or something like that. But it wasn't that I noticed. It was like you just said, my clarity, because I had to cut alcohol out as much as I could. If I did ever have it, it was fairly clean, wasn't drinking beers, that sort of thing. And it helped me obviously lose the weight, mental clarity, productivity, just feeling better and more energetic. And I think at the time as well, I just had better relationships with everyone, and the biggest thing for me, we talked about it before, where being an introvert, naturally, I feel like I'm better with social situations, but I still feel like I need some sort of curtain. I need a little bit of beer, wine, whatever it is, to mask whether it's masking who I really am or just making me feel more comfortable, it's a placebo thing.
It's not a placebo, it's a real.
There you go. Yeah. So I still feel like I've got to have this, otherwise I'm not interesting, or I'm not going to be open enough, but I feel like I'm very much past that. Now, obviously, probably a cultural thing. I've got my mates who are like, hey, let's go have a beer at the pub. Let's go to the pokies, whatever it might be. I'm not big into that stuff, but when the boys want to do it every few months kind of thing, then I'm down for it.
Oh, I resonate with that so much. It's actually tough. I still find it tough. And I think that's that thing with that. It's not linear. When I was training for triathlons, I had a group of women that I would run with, and when they catch up, it was champers or wine at a bar, like a stand-up thing where a drink's in your hand. Now, if you're catching up at a bar from 6 p.m. onwards, like there's no... The thing, you either go and you stand there with a soda water in your hand, or as my mum calls it, an Arctic erotica. She's like 26 years sober now, by the way, so she's a legend.
How good.
You stand there with a drink in your hand, you stand there with a water in your hand and you chat. I still feel super awkward. Like I said to you, I still have self-talk where I'm like, coming in to do this podcast with Trav, don't talk too much, don't talk too fast, don't be too me. Like it does still go through my head, you know. And I'm like that in those types of situations. So I still walk myself through getting FOMO from the things that when I'm there, I don't really feel comfortable being at.
Yeah.
But for me, sometimes it could be the difference between death or a marriage breakup, and I say that with true honesty. Like if I went out and just started drinking in all of those instances, like I am going to go and catch up with the chicks for a wine at the cocktail bar because it makes me feel more comfortable. As an addict in general, like we're all addicts, but for different things. As an addict in general, like that to me could be the difference between like waking up 2 days later somewhere I don't want to be or dying. So there's hard lines I have to draw, and sometimes I haven't drawn them and it hasn't been great. And so I'm learning to live in that discomfort and I have to self-talk my way through it. I have to say, okay, Al, so you want to go there, I understand that. And when you get there, you'll desperately desire having a glass of wine, and red wine was my thing. I love it. I loved it, love it. You know, it'll feel good for the first sip. Does it really feel good after that for you? You're going to have those conversations with those people, and will they be the similar conversations? And there's going to reach a point where you're either not going to be able to make cognitive decisions that are right for yourself anymore, and then you're going to wake up feeling terrible. And for me now, I've known sobriety long enough to understand that if I do have a drink and if I do get drunk, then the effects of that, it's not just the next day. So when I talk about that clarity, which you will know from your time off booze as well, when you have a drink again, the Sunday that you spend at home on the couch is not the only day it affects. It would hit me for the next 5 or 6 days. If I worked out, the sweat would be different, the workout would be different, my body, my head, everything's heavy, no good ideas come out. I would get the 2 p.m. slump, 3 p.m. slump, 4 p.m. slump. So I have to walk myself through it and remind myself how good the Sunday mornings feel. Have you ever woken up hungover free on a Sunday morning where, we live on the sunny coast where it's freaking delicious and thought, damn it.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't feel amazing right now. Just
recently we had a catch up. So I had we all had a mate that passed away, was it 6 years ago now, I think, playing football. James Ackerman, I don't know if you've heard that name at all. But anyway, we do a catch up every year. All us boys catch up. And his biggest thing was he loved beers and bets and stuff at the pub. Yeah. So we'd go down, have a good time, which is awesome. It's a great time. It's funny you just said that because I kid you not, and I've been joking about it with people at work and stuff. I said, I swear I had this big night, drank from about 12 o'clock in the day till probably about 10 o'clock at night. I swear I was hungover for 5 days. I believe it. Now it makes sense. Because I literally was like, wanted to cry. I'd be sitting there and just like want to cry. I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with me? I'd not like this normally. I had no energy. I didn't want to do any of my study, none of my business stuff. And I just felt like shit. I was like, surely it's not one night. I'm just getting old. I'm 31, but I'm still pretty young. But
oh, mate, it gets worse. If my husband has a big night at his
yeah. So, so that makes way more sense now. And that's instantly made me not want to do that again.
Yeah.
So
it affects your output and your brilliance and your ability to show up. It's so phenomenal. But, something that I do really want to be clear about is that those women that I would say no to go, like I just it wouldn't be my thing, and I wouldn't go to the bar and I wouldn't do that. And so in the end, eventually it would be that I would see them on the running, like on the trails on Sunday mornings. And that was it. I didn't really do. And I would have to walk myself through, like, they're not going to like me because they're going to think that I'm not fun. And they see it as like us and Al, and is she really part of the gang and whatever. You have to start going through your own self. You have to remind yourself that it doesn't matter what other people think about you, and it's how, what you walk through your own door at. Like, I think about my house and my family, and nothing matters but what exists within those walls, really. Your
circle.
And in saying that, I've been able to make choices over the last decade that have invited into my life the most phenomenal groups of people and friends. And I haven't lost friends. I've absolutely lost acquaintances over the last decade, and I've lost a lot of strangers from my energetic field, through Instagram and things like that, with my views over the last year and a half, which doesn't bother me at all. But I've invited in, just unconsciously, the most amazing people. And we do a dinner at my place every single Friday night, which I get anxiety about beforehand, then I love it during. And these people come to my house. They're freaking awesome. Most of them drink, but nobody brings alcohol to my house, and I wouldn't care if they did. So every now and then one of the husbands or a woman will bring, they'll have a glass of wine or bring a beer. They're gone by 8:30 or 9. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. And everybody goes to bed feeling great, and we've had a good connection. And if you're not showing up, honouring and being sovereign to yourself and your health, then you are only going to attract people who are also feeling like that about them in their own lives. Like, you will literally be choosing to, I'm not going to say dumb down, because those people aren't bad people. All the people in your life that you choose to have there are awesome for different parts of that. Yeah. But you want to bring in those people that enrich it so much, and experiences that enrich it so much, then you've got to show up as yourself as much as possible, for sure.
Your true self. Yeah, that's cool.
As you are at that time, so changing.
I feel like now we're onto that portion where we've just had a really good chat for that hour or so. Now we want to start diving into a few questions. Now, I hope you're ready for this stuff, because I've been wanting to keep obviously, like we talked at the start, it was like, I want this podcast to keep evolving. So I love the candid chats, because it's the best. I feel like the best stuff comes out then, but having a little bit of structure to it's probably not a bad idea, because then we're giving value to the listeners and that sort of thing. So
absolutely.
Essentially, I just reached out and just said, hey, if anyone has any questions, obviously Alice is incredibly knowledgeable about a lot of things, especially about nutrition, functional medicine. So there was a couple of questions that got fired away. So the first one was, and this is a business sort of, I guess, business and life. So how do you stay on track and stay consistent? Now, we obviously mentioned this earlier, because a lot of people might seem like on the outside, it's like, everything's doing well, whatever. But there are going to be days where you're just smashing. You're doing it really well. So how do you find yourself being able to stay consistent with that stuff?
So with business and life, right? There's a congruency between my business and how I live my life that is so inextricably connected. So remembering that the message that I have in my business is basically how I show up day to day and live. So that's dramatically different than, say, someone running a drop shipping company who's selling protein powders or something like that, for instance. Or is it? I suppose how we do the small things is how we do the big things. I worked my ass off for years, like from probably the first 4 years of my online business. I was working my ass off. As I said, I was learning to code and build websites and launch online courses from zero audience. So people will look at my Instagram now and they're like, oh, she's got nearly 50,000 followers and it's easy for her and but not for me.
She looks like this.
I started with zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Started with zero. I had 0 followers. The photos, oh my God, if you scrolled back, you'd be like all the filters that were being used and everything like that. It was an absolute train wreck. And I was learning about who I was then at the time. The one thing I did and that I've always done is consistently show up and grow and evolve with my message. So consistency for me is absolutely key. And when it comes to, I suppose, growing the business, it's about really believing in the message that you have. So for you, say with even your your vintage stuff. Like it's not just about a t-shirt. Like there's a story that you and Tams have, and a feeling and a vibe that you guys get.
Nostalgia.
From what that means to you. And I've seen your office. It's not just t-shirts. It's everything about specific eras that gets you feeling about a certain way. And I could imagine, like I could probably name 5 things that you would have as part of your collection based on specific kind of, movie groups or whatever the case may be. So there's something that you believe in with passion that you are sharing because it makes you feel a certain way. And that's what I do. And so that's where it's really, really important to not, you mentioned imposter syndrome to me. That's why it's so important to try and find your own unique storyline, because comparing yourself to what else is happening in the market is never, ever, ever going to end well. And in fact, when I'm in creation mode, I mute Instagram accounts. I mute my own Instagram account. Like I try and put myself into such a tight tunnel of vision that I'm not being influenced and distracted, even by people who I see as absolute mentors and inspirations to me online, because I'm really trying to deliver a succinct message that's uniquely mine.
Yeah.
What people I think also don't understand is that even though we all have unique experiences ourselves, that there are so many people in the world that need to be able to connect with our unique experience. So say for me, when I'm within my essential oils business, I don't have an acute disease or illness that I have supported using essential oils. I use them for foundational wellness, for spiritual, physical, emotional, environmental. And yet I have women that I work with who've had anxiety, who've had depression, who've had eczema or psoriasis, or whose child is experiencing, attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity, and they've had these experiences, and that's their story and their message. Their customers aren't my customers aren't their customers. So me being able to sell a specific product to an audience doesn't prove that I'm taking somebody else's customer. It just proves that there's customers that are connecting with my unique message and the way I deliver it. Yeah. Just like there's somebody connecting with my friend Dante's about how she supported her asthma, or with my friend Danielle with how she supported her children's emotional well-being. So if we are delivering someone else's message, not only are we going to literally wave customers goodbye, but we're never actually going to be able to connect. Like that imposter syndrome exists. I feel like imposter syndrome only exists when we are showing up not in congruency with actually who we are. So I've heard totally, and I've heard business coaches say before, look, imposter syndrome is it's natural, and it's like it doesn't mean that you're not an imposter for someone else. Whereas the experience that I've had, and I used to do business coaching, is that when imposter syndrome exists the hardest, it's when you're comparing yourself to other people and when your work takes on a flavour of somebody else's message. So I don't actually agree with that. I think if it's there, then you need to put the blinkers on a little bit more, pull out your unique stories, and maybe that involves a notepad, and that every time you have something come up in your life that connects with this, and I love storytelling, like I said, connects with the message of the beliefs that you have and the feelings that your business creates or your message creates, write it down, share that. Like, don't take too much from other people's or other external stuff. Like, pull it out of you, and that's going to be a huge difference.
It's crazy you say that, because that's spot on, because I kid you not, last night Jordan and I were chatting over Instagram, and we've just come up with a new idea, which I'll talk to you about after the end of this. But we both just lost it. We're like, holy crap, that is an amazing idea. And in my little Apple Notes here, I wrote down like 20 different ideas based off what we just spoke about. And I could tell my creativeness that I used to have with my clothing brand that I had with a mate, it was just spewing out. Like, I'm a really creative person, and I'm very impulsive as well. So when I got that, I was like, I need to write this all down. And without even thinking, I came out with these ideas and concepts that I was like, where the fuck did that come from? But again, it must be my story, right? It's what I truly believe in. And I think the imposter syndrome comes in when I'm talking about, I'm doing my Cert 4 in fitness.
Yep.
I don't truly love the fitness industry. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of what they talk about. I don't like a lot of the styles of training, how a lot of it's based on aesthetics, all that sort of shit. Obviously, looking good makes you feel good a lot of the time. Everyone wants to look good. But I think that's based off societal beliefs too. I think that's all I'm supposed to be fit. I'm supposed to not be like chubby or a little bit sloppy or whatever it might be. Some of the bigger people I've seen are some of the strongest, most fit and healthy people I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because they do all that inner health, the inner wealth. It's that all those things that are internal to them and true to them. They're not worried about what everyone else thinks and how they look. It's based off the fact that they understand the foundational situation is more important than how they look walking down the fucking street.
Yeah, there's a few things you said in there. So the first thing is those ideas that you wrote down last night. Don't start Googling too much before you get to the next stage of the ship it process. So Seth Godin, who you might know,
awesome.
Yeah, did a really good podcast series called the Ship It podcast maybe, or the Ship It project. It's really great. Because when you start to kind of start to look around too much, then it's going to... You're going to start to question
Shut it down a bit.
Actually get into it. Get into the guts of it before you start looking around.
Execute, right? Don't just keep...
And then the next thing is with the fitness industry, good. I'm glad that you can see that there's parts of it that can be improved upon. And it's like what I was speaking about with psychologists or psychiatrists or therapists. Like, just because we have a model of care, or the allopathic model, just because we have a model of care and it is the way that it's always been, it doesn't mean that it's the right way. We can look at that from things that are happening in the world at the moment with medical interventions. I'm 39 years old and all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, the things I've thought are real for my whole entire life are crimes, and the schooling system, the rat race of the corporate world, women in work. I mean, there are so many boxes of beliefs that we've had and we've carried and that our parents have carried and that have been taught to us, that are they real? Does the fitness industry exist the way it does today because it's the best way? Questionable.
Yep.
And when you talk about aesthetics as well, that's really interesting that you say that, because when I was a teenager, like one of the things that I would do from a trauma response was, I underate and then I overate and I was binge eating and I had body dysmorphia. And in my adult years, it took me a really long time before food wasn't a thing, where I could eat a piece of cake and then not go and binge just because I'd broken my healthy eating. And for women and men who do have disordered patterns of eating, that you'll hear from them, that can be really tough to break that spiral of food related patterns. When you talk about aesthetics and strength and inner, I suppose that fitness and resilience, it wasn't until I started... And I know that F45 is disposable. I understand it's not a functional, it's not actually a healthy functional movement studio for a lot of people. But it wasn't until I started there, but then started triathlon training. So when I was training my body to beat myself, was the first time in a competitive sport. It was the first time that I ever removed the aesthetics from what I was training for.
Yeah, it was the functionality aspect.
And the stronger I got mentally and physically, the more at peace I was with my body. And I've never been more at peace than what I am now. And I do not show up to the gym or to my treadmill or to the running track, or I never show up now for aesthetics.
Yep.
Look better. Interestingly, look better probably than I did when I was 26, but I show up for a physical strength, and my goal now is longevity and vitality. I want to feel good. I want to, I always think that age only becomes an issue, or age is only an issue when it becomes our excuse. That concept of life is all... I mean, if you go to the newsagents and have a look at the 40-year-old birthday cards, I just want to burn them all to the ground. It's all downhill from 40. There's jokes about backs and knees and I'm turning 40 next March, and I am
you feel unreal.
Walking, talking 7-year-old. Give me a surfboard, a skateboard, a bike, I'll probably get my skydiver's license, whatever the case may be. I just feel like I'm kind of Peter Panning it a little bit, and that starts in the mind, and then it's accelerated with physical freedom and strength. And I think that functional, I heard Jordan speak about his approach to fitness, and I love that model.
Strength and movement and flexibility,
that mental, gratitude and self-love and self-worth, and showing up for the holistic side of health and fitness. To me, that's really, really special. And if more men showed up with that within their coaching, then the whole fitness industry would shift, and you get to be a part of that. So
exactly,
you can be you feel like an outlier, but they're the best type of people you got to change the game. So it's going to be good.
Well, that's what the idea was based around. So you'll be excited about what we talked about. So, but and look, I have some of my best mates and people that I know that are doing bodybuilding comps and stuff like that. And I've got love for all of them. I would never sit here and be like, oh, why are you doing that? I don't judge people based on what they believe in and, what they want to do. But it's when it gets to a point where people are literally suffering because they think they have to be doing these things based off what we talked about with the societal beliefs and that sort of thing. So, look, all love for everyone that does whatever they need to do. But if they have issues that they need to be fixed or they want to try to fix, then hey, these are the things we need to talk about. We need to talk about gut health and actual nutritional health and the nutrients in food, not just, that calorie. If you eat 100 calories, you lose weight, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, scientifically, caloric deficits work. But how healthy are you at the end of it? What's your gut health doing? Everyone talks about all these issues they're going through when they're competing, etc. And I love the aspect that you have to be so mentally tough to do those things. It's incredible, the discipline that it takes and the habits. But some people, some of the issues they've had during that stuff is like,
I know a lot of women who've really damaged their fertility.
Yeah. Low in body fat and they don't want to eat fats. And it's like, well, fats are some of the most healthy things for us, right? So
you're speaking obviously I'm massive, so this fat has made me really gigantic.
You mess.
Fat's my favorite food.
So look, that answered that question and then some, which was amazing. But that you actually touched on another question that came up, which was the eating disorders. So you covered that pretty nicely, as in
the food thing's really, I think, like alcohol, food is a tricky one because you don't have to drink. You have to eat. Right. So it's not like you can just stop eating and your food disorders are all going to be solved.
Yeah.
There's also a huge difference between when I see men coaching women versus, say, a woman nutrition coach as well. And then also it's just so grey, like the Dietitians Association. And I saw a recommendation that a dietitian had made this morning to somebody who was unwell. It's this macro-focused, I think she had said Wheat Bix and popped chickpea. Anyway, it was just like made me want to gag. There's a lot of that. So women's emotional connection to food, because of our societal construction around the way we look, means that there's some things that are going to need to be flexible. For instance, I get asked the question about fasting quite a lot. Men fast different to the way women fast. So when a woman decides to dramatically alter her dietary intake, 99% of the time, she wants to lose weight. For men, there's a lot more different reasons. So if a woman's coming to me and they're on the juice cleanse, to me, is the straight up giveaway. I'm juice cleansing. Oh, no, you're not. You want to lose weight. No, I'm doing it to detox my organs. Well, you can do that and actually eat food and fats and nourish yourself at the same time. Like, that's a straight up red flag to me, the juice cleanse. No offense to anyone who's got juice cleanses. And then vegetarianism and veganism is another way. Like a lot of people adopting these types of diets today are basing it around their efforts that they have to lose weight. If we were to focus on organ system support, physical strength and physical health, it would look dramatically different. It might actually look like an increase in calories, but with an increase in nutrients. So most of the foods that people eat today, that processed food environment and the diet food environment, is void of the nutrients that our bodies need. And so we can feed ourselves a diet yogurt or eat like a low carb Mr. Atkins bar or something like that, which might have macros in the right place for you to do what you think you're going to do. But as our organs and hormones and bodies are all interconnected, when we fraction or fractionate foods into non-whole food arenas, the body, guess what? The body knows. The body's like, you've given me chemicals, synthetics, fractionated foods. You've taken a fat out of a milk, or you've put a preservative in, or you've removed a protein from this and added it to something else. And the body knows that it's happening. So it's like, I'm going to eat this, but then because you haven't actually nourished me with whole foods, I'm going to scream at you that I'm starving in 5 minutes.
Yep.
And so then the person themselves, I mean, the mental aspect of that type of modifying the diet is so extreme.
Yeah.
But if you put some whole real foods on your plate, like I don't know if you saw what I had for breakfast, but
that looked amazing.
Lamb and like fried lamb in tallow with veggies from the garden and just fat is my primary. Fat is my favorite flavor. But if I could get everybody eating more whole, unfractionated, real foods as close to the source as possible, then we're gonna feel better. If there's a weight loss involved, it's going to happen organically, but there's a vibrancy to people who focus on this type of eating and lifestyle, and you've seen it with the people that you know that eat this type of food as well.
The energy is just different. They just
eyes,
look
hair,
younger.
Skin, energy, mental state. You're also going to find that they're much more this is so interesting, but more confident being themselves, more confident standing in their power, more confident seeking truths and then standing in them, less likely to be swayed, less likely to be led by the pack. There's a sovereignty in these people who stand anchored in the earth and what it produces, and that includes the food that we eat. Tangent, sorry.
That hit the nail on the head because, again, we'll go back to Jordan because I think we both love him, but he walked in my door and I kid you not, this whole room just filled up. Like we were both like energies on the same sort of level, but he just brought it up just that little bit more. And you look at the lifestyle that he lives, it's all these things we talk about. It's the Wim Hof breathing, the ice baths, the training, the flexibility. Like he's doing everything he needs to do to be in the right place. And he's a standing testament to what happens when you do this shit. We're not just saying these things to prove a point or push your own agenda or all these sort of things. It's literally proven that these things will help you. And now I obviously can't then say that because I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian or anything.
Neither are either of us.
No, so we're coming. We're coming across personal experience. Yeah. I'm telling my personal experience. This is what's happened for me when I did change my diet to that point, and my training and just my lifestyle. So getting things like more sun, better sleep, all these things, just the basics, getting them covered, far out. Like I wonder why my anxiety and everything's basically gone. Again, staying on top of it, but yeah.
You said that. I was going to mention that before actually, so I'll just drop it in now because we live on the sunny coast and we're really blessed that it's typically sunny on the sunny coast. But I grew up in Victoria and my husband's stuck in Melbourne at the moment because of border restrictions. And seasonal affective disorder, which happens all across the world during darker seasons of the year. We speak about anxiety and depression, and we speak about hormone imbalance and things like that. And that spot checking happens, in the allopathic care model. But you spoke about sun and how it directly relates to the physical health of both men and women. So there is a hormone that our bodies produce called melatonin, which a lot of people will take a synthetic model of melatonin and it can feel like it works for some people, but it's not a holistic way of supporting good sleep and rest and repair in the body. And the place our bodies rest and repair the most is within our sleep. Melanin, which helps produce melatonin, can only come from sunlight. So in this tragic and horrifying model of government care at the moment, which is like isolation and rubbing carcinogenic sunscreens all over the skin and wearing a rash vest head to toe and, your Legionnaire's hat and all of this type of crap, which is basically what it is, crap. But, you take your body out of the sun and the very first thing that happens is you stop sleeping well. When you stop sleeping well, your cortisol, your stress hormones rise dramatically. When your stress hormones rise dramatically, then things like anxiety and depression and, autoimmune diseases are going to become more prevalent. So that's that interconnectedness with Mother Nature and you. And we tell ourselves, I think, unfortunately, the world's led us down a path where it's telling us that we're not, like it's us and then a tree, or us and then sand and the land and Mother Nature, us and then Mother Nature, separate. But we're literally the same walking, talking ecosystem of breathing, living. Like we have a relationship with the land and can only thrive when we literally hug it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, 100%. And some of my best content I ever did was this random day I went up to Balumba Creek up in Kenilworth.
I don't even know.
Anyway, it's up in Kenilworth.
I still haven't eaten one of those donuts. So
it's near that because I went and got a donut after it. But I went up there just by myself one day. I was feeling like absolute shit for a few days. So I thought, you know what? I think I was just learning about all that stuff, get out to nature, get a feel for it. I felt incredible. That one day, I literally just recorded myself saying a few things and I just kept spitting out these things, which I look back and I'm like, that makes sense. I like that, all this. And it started my journey into eventually getting into this thing, You know, having this, and
I'm so excited for where you're for what's coming. It's going to be amazing. I can tell.
I'm excited too. I try to be a fairly humble person because I just
don't.
That's the thing. I'm trying to get over it and try to be like, look, this is going to be something big.
Yeah.
I think it will be. I'm actually meeting with someone else after this. Ty Lucas, have you ever met him
I'll
before?
follow him today.
Again, really nice guy. He's just come through off the back of the podcast with Jordan, like yourself. But it got to a point where it getting more eyes, more ears. Everyone's starting to see it a bit more. Hopefully this idea with Jordan, we can sort of get something together where everyone can see all these incredible people like yourself and Ty.
You're sitting in that experience that I was talking about of showing up for yourself as this person with a vision that you want to have, and then just people come to you and you begin to form. You
attracting that
100%.
Yeah,
and you do vibe and take those. You either rise or fall based on yourself and then the people directly around you. And unfortunately today I've worked with women for 8 years now. The amount of people, and it's not just the women in relationships with men who are bringing them down, it's 100% vice versa. Like this idea of excusing yourself, like your partner being the reason why you are smaller in some areas or stay small, that excusing exists in a lot of different couples. I think as well we're going to reach this bell curve within some relationship experiences now as the world's dramatically shifting and belief systems are really being shaken up quite a lot, where you're going to elevate, or some people will elevate to a point where they need to make really tough decisions. And that's probably a convo for a different time.
For sure. I could see where you're going with it. I guess we've still... Are you okay for time? Like, you're doing okay?
Yeah.
Ruby's okay?
Oh, just a few more minutes.
Yep.
Let's just roll for a bit longer.
We won't be too long.
Not long.
Another question was, I think we've sort of touched on it a little bit. How do you stop worrying about what other people think?
I used to, so I said to you at the beginning of this, and I forget. So I look ahead more than back. So I forget that I've been doing this now for a decade, online for a decade, more than a decade.
Sounds like a really long time when you say it like
that.
It does,
doesn't it? Yeah. From when I was 2.
Yeah.
I've been online for a long time, and I spoke about the hardest stuff at the start a lot. Which was around a lot of that guilt and that shame about addiction and drugs and alcohol. And that's, there's been different parts of that roller coaster through there. Everybody, regardless of whether you're on a public platform, whether you're sharing at a party or around your dinner table or at the cafe in the morning, like, people are going to judge you. There is just absolutely no doubt about it. I am so firmly anchored in what I believe in, and that it's as much of an expression of me in my own growth, that it's more of an expression of me in my own growth than it is in me being a parrot. And part of that is lived experiences. So if, all of the things that I share about health and wealth and business are coming from a place where I'm literally walking those footsteps or have walked them in the past. And so if it, when I say my truth / the truth, belief systems might not be, like, my truth might be radically different to your truth. But the reason that I say my / the is because to me it is the truth that there is. And as you know, I'm also a bit of a judgy bitch sometimes. So unfortunately, I'm not super empathic with a lot of the opposing ideas, particularly in this time. So I'm trying to be more diplomatic about it. And then I'm like, why?
Yeah.
If other people want to be diplomatic about it, they can. I can keep being really black and white about health or whatever. I have learned, actually. So first, you wade through being judged and you have to keep pulling yourself up. This is a maintenance thing. you can't just go, oh, I don't care about being judged anymore. It's continuous maintenance on walking yourself. You have to have a relationship with your mind, with your inner mind. So when I first got sober, I was really deeply doing mindfulness meditations, and Eckhart Tolle and Marianne Williamson was forming a great part of the education and inspiration I was getting at the time. They were kind of like my mentors without them knowing it. And then that became Dr. Joe Dispenza as well.
Oh, he's good.
Super great. And so Marianne Williamson, the thing that I learned from her the most in her teachings is that it's not anybody else's responsibility to give me anything. Like I don't think my husband has to love me today. I don't think he has to provide for me or support for me. If he came to me tomorrow and said, I really need to have a conversation with you, and I've fallen out of love with you, and we're going to, I need to walk away from this relationship, I don't have an expectation that that's not going to happen. Like I have learned to wave goodbye to expectations I have on any other part of the world to show up for me in any way. And instead I have the knowledge that I get to just simply make choices on what to do in each generous present moment that shows up in my life. And from an Eckhart Tolle perspective, what happens in each of those moments. So let's say if I get a troll on my Instagram account who, at the beginning of COVID or the beginning of this government propaganda a year and a half ago, when I was seeing my truth of it really, really quickly, and I was sharing what I was feeling about it, and I had, photos sent to me from trolls who were sending pictures of inside of hospitals at the time and stuff like that. I had to recognize, and Eckhart Tolle teaches this, that there's a moment where there's facts and then there's the beliefs that we create or the emotion that we create about that. And there's a bubble in between it. There's like this, there's the bubble that you can put consciousness to that most humans simply don't put a consciousness to. And that's the moment that we can learn to control our mind and control our lives. And if we can activate that unconscious bubble, which the ego usually drives, and the ego's sole purpose is to keep us low and flat and small. If we can put the ego in the passenger seat and be like, this bubble's mine now, I'm going to own this, and I'm going to put the fact aside. Like the fact is there's a text in my other's message inbox. And then I would think about the emotion that would stir up in me. Is that a real emotion? Where has that come from? And eventually you can transition from understanding that this is a self-created emotion that's actually got nothing to do with this actual factual experience. And I could learn to transition. So that's the muscle and the maintenance that needs to occur from something activating you. A lot of people use the term triggering, but activating. So something activating you to see the bubble, leveraging the bubble to form empowered, like a strength of mental, Jordan called it mind flex.
Mind flex, love that.
Right, so you're activating this bubble that most humans will unconsciously be driven to smallness within, and instead you're going to double bounce that bastard right into this super strong mindset of where you're going to choose to have that take you. So the judgments are going to come regardless. There's maintenance and strength work that you need to do around that. And then you reach this almost blissful point where you begin to look for the judgment. And I say that not in a way that I'm anchoring for bullying or trolling, but now that I've been in the arena for a certain amount of years, I can tell you that the best experiences that I've ever had in my life are based off my greatest challenges in the arena. And that if I'm not activating both myself and perhaps other people around me in whatever way, shape or form that is, whether that's with a positive message or something that's designed to fire people up, because I am, one of my personality traits is that I do use, I suppose, fighting for a cause as a part of my message or a part of my brand, I suppose. If I'm not activating people and myself as strongly as I possibly can, which means that the more, it's polarity, right? The more I activate myself and activate my audience, the more judgment is going to come up. But if I don't do that, then I'm also not going to reach the greatest echelons of my own personal strength and possibility and optimized life and achievement. And I've experienced the results of doing that too much, and the power and possibility you know, if you want to go, well, what's more important, like the results you get at the end or the 5 strangers that tell you you're disgusting and was a horrifying criminal that I got last week because I was recommending people don't decide to do something that they don't research a little bit more.
You're a criminal.
A horrifying criminal, not just a criminal.
I think I saw that actually. I think
I shared it on my account. Wow. The positives outweigh the negatives. And you know what? If it wasn't, like the positives to me are not just, like it's a mental, there's a financial positive. Because here's the thing. I've had people contact me in the last year and they're like, are you afraid you're going to lose sales? Are you afraid your business is going to, like for having a very opposing view than say a government narrative that's being spooked at the moment? Are you afraid your business is going to suffer? Are you afraid you're going to lose customers? Like I'm not afraid of much. Absolutely damn negatively afraid of losing customers or followers. And I've lost about 8,000 followers last year and I gained about 15,000. So at 8,
more passionate too, right?
People that
towards your story,
100% more aligned with me.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't I want to wave goodbye to those people that don't align with my beliefs or that don't like? There's energetic spaces. So if they want to leave, then and they don't align with my message, then that is really, really good for my energy. 10 minutes. Then that's really, really good for me. And for the people who are super aligned with my message and my energy, I will bounce off that, and that's super powerful for me. Now, the louder I got, the more money my business made, the more, I suppose, aligned my customers became. Interestingly, actually, in my path of sales in my career, I used to attract a lot more women that wanted me to save them and coach them to being where I seemed to be at the time. Yep. And I show up now in a way where I'm like, I'm not your mama, I'm not your manager, I'm not your coach. I don't want to business coach people. I don't want to necessarily work one-on-one within a nutritional space. And so now I attract a lot more women who want to be inspired and they want to ask questions, fine, but they know that whatever they take from my own experience and knowledge, they've got work to do themselves. Like, if you're being judged on mass, oh, you're doing the right thing. Like,
yeah, and it's everything you've nailed today, and but it brings back so many like feelings of what I'm at that beginning stage now. Like I've gone through my 10 years of going through the tough shit, learning all the things. Same thing with you. Like I've had to do nights where I work a full-time job, then I'm coming home working on my passion project until 1 a.m, whatever it might be. And people wonder how I get to this point and where I'm like talking a bit better than I used to. It's because I had to fucking work on it. I had to build that mind muscle because the brain is a muscle too. But it's funny you say those things about how if you got people leaving or whatever, you're on the right track. I've got it now. I'm on a smaller level, obviously, but I'm noticing it. There's people that, you know, might have been interacting with me or whatever. They're gone. And I told Jordan about this where I was at a party one time and one of the guys I've known for years literally comes up to me and he goes, Trav, I've got to tell you something. All those posts and stuff you do about inspirational sort of shit, I used to think, oh, shut up. I used to hate it. But now he's in a better place. He loves it. So there was probably a time where I was bringing out insecurities in him. Probably do it to a lot of people. And I'm not saying I'm better than anyone or whatever. Like you said, not putting myself on a pedestal. I'm genuinely just doing this stuff to try to help people because I don't want others to feel how I've felt in the past. But people are taking it as, oh, you know, shut up. Like, but they're not the people that I want following me, right?
And that's their stuff.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And I feel sorry for them. You have to feel sorry for them because if they're in such a place that they have to take the time to either unfollow me or tell me something that they can't stand it, I feel sorry for them because it's obviously something they're going through that they have to tell me or go out of their way to not like a post or not comment or whatever, not interact. They're obviously in their own things and I'm actively bringing those insecurities or whatever out.
When we were talking midway through about comfort weakening, let's just say Aussies and, you know, the Western world, there's not many people that are living even close to 10% of their potential. And that's totally cool. But you can elevate, like you'll get to the next 10% and you'll activate or trigger so many more people who've known you in your life, and you're still just getting started. There will be friends who fall away and become acquaintances, and then you're going to bring those new people in. This idea that we can change and nothing changes is fucking ludicrous, but it's amazing because most people will kind of go, oh, like I want all the big different things, but everything has to stay exactly the same. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right. That's great. Yeah, that's great. Never going to happen. So, but then 5 years, they'll be like, nothing changed. I did everything I could. Did you? Did
you really?
Yeah. Don't dim it. You can be, there's the difference between, don't curate your growth and don't hide your success or your growth or your empowerment or your strength. People desperately need to hear that from you. And because you would have heard from your male friends or mentors who've also been through their own hero's journey, and you have yourself and are learning and going through the other side. There are so many men and women who need to hear that from other people. And it's going to have people fall away and activated in that, and that's fine. But the ultimate is that A, you're healed and you're healing and working through it, and that B, that's inspiring other people to do the same. For
sure. This podcast I've been looking for that tool or platform that's going to help me help people, because my whole thing, which I found one day, I can't remember how I did it, but it was leave a positive impact on as many people as I can before I die. So I thought that was going to be through coaching, online coaching, which I'll still do, because obviously you need to live, you need to make money. So if I can still help people personally, one-on-one through that, cool, I'll still do that. But I've found this to be the most effective way right now to get to a bigger audience and help more people and meet people like yourself, create this really cool circle that can then do bigger things on a bigger stage. So
humans are trippy. I think life is so crazy. And now if I look at this from even the monetization and connection, the days of doing one thing are over. I mean, don't get me started talking about financial institutions and work and where people are going to get paid from and what we, might want to consider doing with our money and what that currency looks like in the future. But different models of growth, different platforms for monetization in, entirely different areas is something I think all of us can definitely start to put our fingers into it.
We might need a part 2 for the business side of things, of money and that sort of thing, because obviously I want to make sure she's okay, little Ruby. So we'll...
I don't usually bring my kids to podcasts, but she's having a sick day today. So I was like, I'll bring her wrapped in a blanket. I did want to give you the warning first.
I appreciate that. That's all good. But I'm glad you actually came through and you offered a heap of value just then. I feel like we could obviously easily go for another 4 hours, but... we'll knock it off there. Hopefully everyone can then, get some stuff out of that, which I'm sure they will. And, I'm sure we'll catch up again at some point and we'll go from there. That. But I appreciate it.
That would be so cool. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.